Good day, radio listeners. Welcome to this edition of the Pure Sex Radio broadcast. We're glad to have you here with us.
Yes, we are.
My name is Jonathan, and I'm here with my good buddy and the guru of the Pure Sex Radio program, Steven Cervantes. So, Steven, welcome to the show.
You're blessing me already, and that's the topic for the day, blessings.
Yeah, awesome.
And you know, it's been a blessing already being here with you.
Yeah, well, don't get ahead because we want to save something for the program. But so that just means Steven's chomping at the bit here, to really get going. But
good to go.
Before we do dive into kind of our topic for this program, I just want to let you listeners know, as we do periodically, that we are a listener-supported broadcast. What that means is the way you're either hearing us or seeing us is because we've had generous partners like you.
Thank you.
Who listen, come along, and decide they want to give financially and continue to help us expand this ministry. We have amazing opportunities to continue to expand this program into other countries, and we have listeners in over 100 countries, and it's encouraging to get feedback from them. And so if you'd like to continue to see us doing this work all around the world, please go to puresexradio.com and click on the donate link.
And we have a missionary that I'm thinking specifically of that said, when I was overseas, man, I counted on you guys to encourage me. So you blessing us helps us bless them, and it goes round and round.
Absolutely. Well, and I am especially excited, Stephen. I want to just pass it right off to you because we have this incredible topic on the issue of blessing, and the way we're kind of framing this is 40 blessings for a man's wife. So this is really meant for kind of husband to wife. So I want you to kind of introduce what we're going to be doing, and then we can start kind of unpacking what this might look like for a husband blessing his wife.
So first of all, the 40 days. It's going to be clear right away to some people why 40 days. But why is that number popular? Today it's pretty popular. You hear 40 days of this and 40 days of that.
Well, from a Christian worldview, which is the worldview that we come from, that's a significant number throughout the Bible in history. You had in Genesis, you had Moses on the mountain for 40 days as he was having this intimate encounter with God, and that's where we get the Ten Commandments. And so this was a time of preparing his people for his law, and so Moses was on the mountain for 40 days, and then you have the season of the Exodus when God rescued his people from Egyptian slavery, and then they are in the wilderness for 40 years in preparation of going into the Promised Land. Some of that was discipline, but also preparation for going into the Promised Land. And then when Jesus came on the scene, you even have this time of 40 days in the wilderness where he's being tempted by Satan in preparation for his public ministry. So there's this theme of 40 being a season of kind of preparing and launching into something new, something just the next phase of what God might have for you. And so I feel like when we attach that number to certain things that we do in our ministry, like the 40 Days of Purity online course that we have, I don't want people to think that it's arbitrary. There's a meaning behind it. We want to help people sort of launch into whatever the next thing is that God has for them that's full of blessing and full of goodness.
That's right.
That's kind of where we're going.
Any connection to God, we're in, right?
Right.
So these blessings that we're going to talk about, and just the idea of blessing is going to be talked about today. But I want to say, since he was already making some biblical references, that all of these blessings are based on a verse that's been... a lot of them came out of Ephesians, but there are lots of New Testament verses. The verses aren't included, but the blessing is built on a verse so that you know that. It's not just stuff that's popular to say. No, we want to camp on God's word and his truth. So know that there's a verse behind every one of these blessings. And then let's just talk about the idea of blessing. I said, why don't you collect a few thoughts about blessing that you want to say, and then I'll make a few notes about what I want to say. And so when I say blessing, what comes to your mind?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is, again, it just kind of from a biblical standpoint in history, is you would have these patriarchs of the faith with their sons, give the blessing. They even called it the blessing. And it was sort of, a lot of it had to do with, attachment to inheritance in a lot of cases, in terms of perpetuating the name and the family system and just kind of the ways things are done. But it was significant. I mean, to the point that when Jacob stole the blessing from his older brother Esau, there was, it was like murderous anger that happened in that, because it was seen as such a powerful thing. So one of the things that I would say is, sometimes for me to kind of define something, it helps me to think of what it's not. And the first thing that came to my mind of what it's not is, a blessing is not merely a compliment. I think there's a different depth of dynamic of meaning behind blessing than, I can pay you a compliment. Like, Stephen, you look really nice today. You know, you clean up pretty good. You dress well. A compliment, I mean, that's a form maybe of blessing, but it's kind of maybe I could put it in sort of the elementary category of blessing. I think a blessing is much more of a transfer of goodness. I'm wanting to place a mantle of something good onto you and speak that over you.
Ooh, that's good.
In a way that it really gets down into your bones.
Ooh, that's good.
And a compliment, maybe a compliment can do that, but I tend to think of compliments as, they don't necessarily go deep into my soul. A blessing is, I think, meant to really transfer something into a person's soul that is good and honoring.
That's great. So now we're going to stop during this program periodically and just read a blessing. We could talk about it, but there might be a single female out there that doesn't have anybody to read a blessing over them. So as we read these, we're not just giving you samples. We want to speak blessing over the wives that are out there, and the single women, and the older women, the women that haven't been loved on very well. The Father wants you to be loved well, and if these words can speak to you, then so let it be. And we speak in Jesus' name. We're just two guys trying to send out blessings, and so I just turned the sheets over. We're not going to do them in order. We're going to give you a random sampling. So here's blessing number 28. Sweetheart, I want to encourage you and lift your spirit when you get down. You bless me. Your love carries me, and your strength helps me. You are a wonderful woman, and I want to encourage and thank you. My goal is to have a full, abundant life, and that is what God has promised. That is my goal, and I've made it my goal inside and out, and I want that for you too. Thank you for all that you bring to this marriage. And then there's a little prayer. Father, please let my wife know she is deeply loved, and bless her with love, and fill me so that I can pour love into her.
Yeah, so my question to the listener out there is, do you hear the difference between maybe what we might define as a compliment and what you're hearing in that as a blessing? It just has a different, if I can put it this way, it just seems to have a different depth to it.
Yes,
right. There's
soul,
a richness.
right.
Like, man, this goes.
Yes.
I don't know if a woman or a wife could hear that and be unmoved by that. I mean, and maybe that's part of it too. A blessing is meant to move a person in their soul, and have not to try to contrive a response out of somebody, because that's the other thing about blessing. I believe blessing is one way. In other words, this isn't fishing for a return blessing or for a return compliment. And I really want the listeners to hear that, because husbands, this isn't about you getting sex from your wife. Okay, this isn't about any kind of return from her in terms of, hey, you know what, if maybe this is a magic formula.
Not a bartering.
If I say these things, no. This is an offering. Maybe that's another way to consider a blessing, is I'm making an offering to you that I want to pour something over your life and over your soul that blesses you, that lifts you up, regardless of any kind of response you may or may not have to that.
So when we talk about blessing, 4 words came to mind. One, just as you said, that it's a gift. It's unconditional. It's just a gift. And it's a building up. It's always encouraging because we get tired, we get sad, we get lonely, we feel rejected. And it's a nurturing of the soul. It's not a pep talk. It's not a joke to make you laugh. I'm not trying to distract you and say, don't look at your pain. Look over here. Look over here. Isn't that a pretty sky or sunset? Don't look. Don't look. No. It's a nurturing of your soul. And it's about identity. What value and worth you really have. And when we remind ourselves of our true identity. You know, it's fun because I've been playing a lot this week with we live in two worlds. And we get messed up. You have to have two different thoughts side by side. Because sometimes we want to grab the spiritual stuff and put it on the physical stuff. Do it now, God. I said to do it. Just do it. You're God. Get over here and do it. But we're in His time frame and in His plan. We're working His plan. But we're still alive today. And so we're going back and forth. And so we want these to be spiritual, nurturing, building, and showing you great identity.
So I want to speak a blessing here. Just again, kind of choosing randomly from our list of 40 blessings for a wife. This is blessing number 3. Dearest one, I have been challenged to focus on whatever is beautiful and worthy of praise. I am called to think of the beauty, focus on beauty, and talk of beauty. I'm being challenged to see beauty as a blessing. You are part of the beauty that exists in my life. You're a beautiful part of God's creation. You are beautiful. And then there's a short prayer here. Lord, help me express to my wife all the beauty she brings into my life.
Wow.
And what I love about this, Stephen, is we have gotten so distracted in our culture with believing that the term beauty can only be attached to the physical. And we've cheapened it in many ways. We've degraded it through things like pornography and these other kind of things that then actually cheapen even the physical beauty of a person by relegating it to an object for my own use. But this expression of beauty in this blessing goes so much deeper. It's not just about physical beauty. It includes that, I think. I think we do need to speak that over our wives, that we find them beautiful in their appearance and their radiance. But this goes also to the expression of beauty that comes through her in her creativity, in her mind, in her emotions, and just how she, her personality. There's a beauty and if I could even put it in these terms, beauty also, to me, it makes me lean in towards the uniqueness in which God has created each one of us. Men out there that are married, there's no one on the planet like your wife.
Right.
So that's beautiful. There's a creativity, there's a uniqueness there that can be celebrated and blessed.
And I love that the thought of beauty and beautiful. And why? Because it touches us to our core. Why does beauty speak to all of us? Why is it like a uniting? We can stand together on the word beauty right now and be connected as one. Why? Because the Father is beautiful. And He made the beautiful. And when we see beauty on this side, it's a reflection of beauty on the other side. It touches our spirit when you say beauty. It's like, oh, yes, I want to participate. I want to enjoy beauty. I want to be with beauty. I want to be surrounded by beauty. And that's like eternity, right? To be in awe of the beauty and the wonder. So I want to read a blessing.
You want to read one? Okay.
Okay. So mine is blessing number 30. It says, Dear bride, the Bible says the power of life and death is in the tongue. And I'm called to speak life, words of encouragement, joy, and hope. God gives me the power to build up or tear down. I choose to speak words that build up. I choose to speak blessings. I want you to know you are a wonderful woman. You are a chosen daughter of the King. He has anointed you. He clothes you in righteousness. He loves you. And the prayer, Father, help me speak words that build up. help me affirm my wife and lift her up with my words.
What I love about that is, and it kind of that's almost in some ways an umbrella over all of these blessings, is just the importance of words. And I want the men out there to hear this. And it's one of these things where, let me just be honest with you, Stephen. You know, the old saying says, if you're pointing a finger at somebody else, three are pointing back at you. You know, that kind of a thing. So, listeners, men out there, I'm saying this probably more for me than I am for you. But as men, sometimes when it comes to our wives, a lot of men, we get roped into this false belief that says, listen, as long as I'm putting food on the table, providing, you know, and I'm present in terms of like, listen, I'm not abandoning her, I'm not, you know, cheating on her, anything like that, then that's good enough. That communicates, right? And I love what Stephen has taught me over the years is to understand the difference between the word communicate and talk. There's a difference between, you can communicate without words, but what we're talking about here is you got to communicate with words and choose wisely the words that you say, because words do matter, right, Stephen? And so what you're saying in this blessing is, I choose to speak words of life and joy and goodness over you, and I'm choosing those words intentionally because I can't just assume that if I keep my mouth shut and live this model life, that's necessarily connecting with you in terms of a blessing.
Right next to you alone. I live a model life next to you, but don't engage you. Yeah, falls short. So I had a couple more thoughts on blessings that I wrote. A blessing is a vision, right? It talks about today and it talks about the future. Anybody giving you a blessing is also giving you a statement of love and value and worth. And they're saying, in essence, I see greatness. I see great things. Right? All the blessings in the Old Testament were about the greatness to come, right? And what's ahead. And it's like there is greatness waiting for you. And it works best if you live like a great one now. And how do we know that? Because someone casts a vision, it creates a vision, a blessing for us. And so when a father says to a son, boy, I can see you touching lives, that's a blessing and a vision. And the son says, you know what? I'm playing in the dirt. I don't get what my father says, but he's saying I'm going to touch lives with my life. That's a vision. That's a blessing. That's bigger than the moment. That came from someone bigger than me, creating something in me. That's what a blessing is.
That's good. And I want to share one here then. I want to share with you blessing number 11. It says, lovely wife, my life is richer and fuller with you in it. I want to express that thought to you right now. I'm grateful that you are here and with me. You make my life richer and fuller. I'm called by God to practice praise and thanksgiving. So please know my life would be smaller and shallower without you in it. Life is so much more with you by my side. And the prayer here is, Father, thank you for my wife. Thank you that she brings richness to my life. And, you know, as I was reading that, Stephen, one of the things that popped into my head was, from the very beginning, we see the value and completeness that a wife brings to a husband, because when Adam was alone, God said, it is not good. That state of being is not good. It's not good that you're alone. So I will make someone that fits you or completes you. And then we find out elsewhere in Proverbs that it says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. There is such a goodness and a completion that happens. And I think so many times we are, especially in the Western world and certainly in the United States especially, we are trained to be very individualistic in our mindset. And that even then enters into, I think, marriage, where we still just sort of keep living our separate parallel lives.
Yes.
And this blessing is saying, you know what, I'm actually acknowledging the fullness that you bring into my life. In other words, I'm admitting there's an incompleteness to me apart from you. That You fill the gaps. You complete me in a way that makes my life richer and fuller and so much more meaningful. Now I'm curious. I want to look at the camera here and ask the wives out there. I'm incredibly curious to know, and we would love for you to give feedback on this. You can send your feedback to us at Twitter at Pure Sex Radio, or you can email us at mypoint@puresexradio.com. I'm curious on this front. If your husband were to speak that blessing that I just spoke, how would you respond to that? Would you have a response that was negative or like would you necessarily deny that? Like, no. I don't bring anything to your life. I don't add anything to your life. Maybe I'm being a little facetious or sarcastic here, but I think that the reality is first of all, most men, if we're brutally honest, we know how much we need help. And I think if women and wives were honest in a non-arrogant sort of way, they would recognize just how much they do complete their husbands.
Yes.
The reality that
good.
this guy would be a mess without me. And I think that's a good blessing to speak over your
I
wife.
do too. And I love that lovely. I just love the word lovely, you know, and that you make me more. Isn't it? It's so true that a wife makes us more and that we would be less. And then it sort of triggers me into the idea that we're really, don't forget, we're all on growth missions. And I want to have a talk at some point. Well, how come people are not on their mission? I don't get that. But that's a side question. You're on a growth mission. That's why you listen to this podcast every week. You're on a growth mission, and we know it. And you're making a statement to God, to yourself, to your community, those around you. I'm on a growth mission. It is important to grow and to do things that build up and encourage. But I had a guy tell me something. He said, I came to a realization this week. My wife agitates me because she makes me look at me. And you know, the agitation of my wife is a good thing. Because if I was not ever agitated by my wife, I could stay the same and die. And I thought, wow.
Well, and as soon as you said that word, you know what I thought of? A washing machine. You know what that device is called? It's called an agitator. So that's how everything gets cleaned, is it's continually beating up those clothes, you know.
Beat the weakness out of me.
Yeah.
So, but if you think about that, isn't that great? When she upsets you, you have to look at you. Now we don't. We lash out at her.
Right.
That you did this to me. But whatever feelings I'm feeling are about me. So when you get agitated, think about it. God is growing you through your wife. Remember we said, wives make us more because they add to us. But they also agitate us so that we can fling off the weak things and become more.
Well, in that regard, I'd love to share this one blessing here as we have a few minutes left. Blessing 22. Beautiful bride, God is growing me. God is working on me. I'm his project. As such, I know you have felt me going through growing pains. Sometimes I throw fits and resist challenges. I know sometimes I can be difficult. Thank you for being my helper and friend. I need a faithful helper and friend in my life, and you are, here's the word, my lovely. Thank you. You bless me. And then the prayer is, Father, please renew my wife, give her strength and wisdom, bless and lift her up. And so when you were saying lovely, and when you were saying, listen, we need help and all this kind of stuff, it made me think of that blessing there.
The love of Jesus, right, coming out of you makes you lovely. Right?
And part of this, too, is when you're talking about that man who is saying, listen, I'm recognizing that the things that previously I would resist in terms of seeing as an irritant from my wife, I'm recognizing that's sharpening me and crafting me. That's sort of just the way truth operates. It exposes where we have false beliefs. It exposes where we need help, and light exposes what's in the dark, right? And so I think it's important for husbands out there, even though we're couching this as this is something that husbands can do to bless their wives, we need to be able to recognize on the back end about how God has positioned us in that relationship for our growth through her.
Yes.
And if we'll open ourselves up to that, man, it really reduces a ton of stress in our
It does.
relationship.
And men also need to do that to one another.
Mhm.
If you go out and play with another guy and he never agitates you, makes you think, challenges you, right? He's a friend and he's comfort, but that's not a growth friend, right?
Yeah.
Because you and I, as soon as we walked in, we started talking.
We're throwing stuff
and
up on the board over
There's
here.
a whiteboard, and Jonathan's drawing his model, and I'm drawing my model, and we're trying to capture information. How are we going to pass it out? How are we going to order and organize ourselves? God is the God of order, and we are truly knowable, right? And this is a skill of God, to bless one another. You can practice this good skill, or you can wave it off. It's your call, men.
Mhm.
And wives, do not go, oh, well, that's not for me. No, please. Download this. Give it to your daughter if you're a mother, right? Use this tool. Let the kingdom be built up from this one little tool.
Well, and with the last couple minutes that we have remaining, I do want us to talk about what is the best use for this. Like, we talked a little bit about blessing. Listen, kind of, how do you unpack that? What does that mean? It's, it's more than just a compliment. There's a sense of you're connecting, you're trying to pour something into that person's soul that enriches them and grows them and helps them see them. It's a way of honoring them. How can a husband use this tool? What if a wife is listening and her husband is listening? How would you address that? And then maybe a little bit of what's the best mindset for giving a blessing, but then also how do you receive a blessing? Maybe give a little bit of instructions on
if I
on
mess
that.
up and miss something, you fill in, okay?
Sure.
So men, I'd suggest you download this, and then at dinner time on Valentine's Day, whip this thing out and start saying, I would just like to bless you. And maybe you get through 5 or 6 of them, and maybe she cries or she celebrates or you end up on the couch kissing. I don't know what happens. Whatever God does, whatever he wants to do when blessings flow. But then make a personal commitment. I'm asking you to, over the next few days, do all 40 of those. Mm-hmm. You could take a whole day and do them and just start in the morning, say one, or the next day. You know what I mean? Use it as a tool. But if you're a wife, and your husband may not be listening, well, help him download it, make it available. And then if you have daughters and you have son-in-laws, right, pass the tool around. Let the women ask and let the men know it's good. And so the whole waiting to be loved thing, no, work at it. Let's work at this so that we can grow blessings and love.
That is great, Stephen. And we will be putting that up on the website with the show notes. And so if you go to puresexradio.com, we will have that there with the show notes. Also, if you're getting it through a podcast distributor, iTunes, or any of these others, they usually have the show notes there too, and it'll be in there. But I highly encourage you, men, get out there, do this. This is something you can do proactively to bless your wife in a way that I'm not one to make many guarantees, but I'm pretty confident this will speak to her soul in a way that is enriching for her. And guys, it's a blessing for you too. It's a blessing for you to be able to give this kind of a gift for
and
your
God gave
wife.
us the words. We did the packaging. All you got to do is download.
Exactly. Well, thank you everybody for being with us, and we look forward to having you back here again next week on the Pure Sex Radio broadcast.
Thank you.